back to the Headbanger, the show where we interview interesting and insightful people here at Nash. And this week, I'm joined by Tess. It's so good to see you.
Hi, good to be here.
Hi. Okay, so you actually listen to our podcast.
Yes.
And, yeah, Miss Headcock, Miss, I can't speak today. It's been a long week. Finals are coming up. Sorry, you gotta forgive me.
It's okay.
Miss Hancock here is has heard our podcast so many times. She pretty much knows what's going down here, so I don't even need to explain. We're just gonna jump right in. What is your favorite color and why?
Okay, so I'm hesitant to say this, but pink is my favorite color. And the reason I said I was hesitant is because I think pink has a little bit of a stigma against it. Like, if you're over 5, it should not be your favorite color. But it's always been my favorite color. Love at first sight with pink, so.
Yet again, the Owen Chase effect holds true, because for it's like so many reasons, just in what you were saying. So I definitely want to dive into that love at first sight thing. So we'll touch on some of the other ways that we've kind of become friends through high school. Mm-hmm. The one thing in particular I'm thinking of. But like the second was kind of minor. Like in our English classes, we've always been the two that were like obsessed with Jane Austen.
Yes.
And I think, especially reading Pride and Prejudice this year, and everybody said like, this is garbage. I hate this. And I'm like, how? Like, how could you possibly think that?
How could you think that and be a person? I don't know.
Well, so the love thing, like, what is it about Jane Austen and like her writing and the way that she develops the plot, and particularly that book, because it's like definitely the most in your face, and it has the most like different characters falling in love and whatever. Like, how does that speak to you, and why is that such an important or like meaningful thing to you?
I think the thing I really like about her writing is just that it's real in a way that I think a lot of us can relate to. And this sounds bad, but a lot of our lives are pretty boring. Like, if you wrote a novel about most of our lives, it would be like they walked into a classroom and went through 8 hours of school and then went home and did homework. I mean, with variation, but pretty much. And I think Jane Austen does a good job of showing that that's true. Like, if you look at these lives on paper, they look kind of boring. But these people are so interesting, even though, like, they don't seem like interesting people. And then the thing with, like, Darcy and Elizabeth, like, I think that's a much better representation of how people actually fall in love than, like, Cinderella or some of the other novels we read where it's just, like, this instant connection. I mean, they hate each other at first.
Yeah.
Which I think sometimes is exactly how it goes down.
Yeah. And I agree with you on that. That I think she gives, like, such a life to regular, ordinary people. And, like, the only person from Pride and Prejudice that I just, like, can't stand is Mr. Collins. But, like, you're not supposed to like him, so it's okay.
He's the worst.
Oh, God. And, oh, yeah, he's horrible. But, so, yeah, I also like the point you made about how real it is. Because Darcy and Elizabeth just hate each other. Has so much prejudice for him, and he's too prideful and whatever, and hence the name of the book.
Yep.
But I am curious as to like, do you think, in terms of this like overall, like plot line of love, do you think that from the moment they met each other, like despite what Austen, I mean, obviously she wanted them to be together, but do you think like that was meant to be? And if this situation was like in the real world, I guess what I'm really asking you is like, do you think there's like a soulmate? I guess the term's kind of overused, but like, is there one person out there for you and for me? Like, is that a thing? I'd like to know your thoughts.
I feel like no, at least not exactly. I think you might have like a couple soulmates maybe, because clearly like location and timing play a role. Because, I mean, you can't expect to be drawn towards someone just by like some weird kind of magic. But I do think that like in like a radius of where you are, there's got to be somebody who's like your one, or at least like one of 20 or something.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely like Austen kind of portrays this love as like, they reconcile with each other on who they are and kind of recognize their own faults and they do fall in love, and it's gorgeous, and anybody who says otherwise is stupid. But actually a contrasting view is from Their Eyes Were Watching God. When Janie Crawford has 3 husbands.
Yes.
And I guess we can both agree that the first husband isn't really like.
Yeah, he's not a good choice.
Not at all. And she doesn't even pick him because
No.
it's arranged. But her second and third husband are both her choice.
But they're yet also both wrong in their own ways. Yeah.
But do you think? I think. Well, it takes time for those things to develop in both of them. So I'm wondering if do you have the opinion that like there might be a perfect person for you in each step of your life, and like there's some, like every, obviously in relationships you're growing, like with a person they kind of change you in a way, and you definitely change them. But like, do you think there's a specific person that might be for you in this part of time, and then when it's gone, there's the next person?
Yeah, I actually think that's a really good way to look at it. But I also think, like, someone like Janie is a good example of this. Just that, like, you really can't be, like, really with the right person until you are kind of, like, fully yourself. You know what I mean? And I feel like Janie, probably until after her third husband, whose name I forget, has died, really isn't really, like, her full, I don't want to use self-actualized, but she's not, like, fully what she was meant to be as a person. So I just think that she doesn't have enough of herself to find someone who fits that self perfectly.
Yeah. And Tea Cake, that's the third husband's name.
Yes. Okay. How could I forget that?
Isn't it such a? Well, that's not his real name.
No, but it should be.
It's like something stupid, and everybody calls him Tea Cake. It's like John. I think
it is John.
Is it? I don't remember.
Or is that her second? What? I don't know.
There's too many men.
There's too many husbands.
Yeah, there's too many men tied with a weird sexual pear tree. There's too much going on in that book. Okay, well, so, we could probably go on forever. It definitely ties into the idea of like predestination.
Oh yes.
It's just like, I don't know. Like, I've had people tell me that they don't believe in predestination per se, but there's definitely like the thought that God has put someone in like in place for them, almost like they have that one husband or wife that's waiting for them.
Yeah.
I've even heard of the idea of like praying for your future spouse. Like, I don't, it's very interesting. What are your thoughts on that? Like
praying for your future.
Yeah. If that's what it is.
I mean, I can see that, being something that people would be drawn to doing, especially like people who are like, I don't want to say desperate, but like people who are like ready to get married. I can totally imagine like someone being like, just send them my way. Yeah. Kind of thing. I mean, it seems a little weird. Like, I think doing that at our age would be a little weird.
Maybe,
but maybe not. I mean, maybe you should pray for your future husband and children and everything. That makes sense. But I also think I'm more of the opinion that prayer isn't necessarily what you verbalize, but because we have an all-knowing God, he knows exactly what you want all the time. So you don't have to say what you want because he already knows that. So probably if you're imagining your future life, probably that translates into a prayer anyway. Yeah,
that's actually a perfect transition to where we're going. Mm-hmm. So, I guess most people know, both of my parents are pastors, but I don't know. I mean, I've always known that, you're pastor's kid just like me, and it's fantastic to have somebody else because it's like. Nobody understands. But it's like PKs for life, man.
Double PKs for life.
Double PKs. Yeah, it's true, actually. Because, that's even a weirder situation.
I've never met another double.
Yeah, it's like, both of your parents, what? And it's like, how does that even work? Especially, like, if you're Catholic.
Then they're like, that's not even possible.
They don't even know how to wrap
There are no Catholic PKs. Well, actually, there might be.
Yeah, there might be. Wait, wasn't it which pope was like he definitely had a son?
I don't know.
We learned about it in Euro.
I mean, I know pre-Reformation, a lot of them had various children. Yeah.
I thought it was like one of the popes like he had to like exile his son or something.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about, but I do not remember the name.
I don't
of the
remember
pope.
it either.
No.
I don't know. I remember Winchell talking about it way back in
yeah.
NAI. Anyway, so being a pastor's kid comes with a lot of opportunities for growth. And I mean, you know, I guess there's like two schools of thought in terms of where we go as PKs. Yeah. There's like either the stereotypical like pastor's kids you see in movies and stuff that are total like anarchists like
rebels.
Yeah, like rebels running in the street, like, you know, all this crazy stuff. And then there's the other like crazy end of the spectrum.
Yes.
Where we're just like the most devout, straight-laced
people,
like perfect
ever to live and walk the earth. Yep.
And obviously, you know that neither one of those things
is actually
necessarily true. So I would like to know how being a double PK has affected both your relationship in the church and your personal relationship with Christ.
Okay.
If you don't mind sharing, of course.
So, I would say in terms of my personal relationship with Christ, I think it's been nothing but a positive thing, really. Because at least with my parents, it's very much always been like, you know, they kind of give me what they know, and then it's always been up to me to kind of pick and choose what I think, and also to kind of like, it's really nice to, I'm sure you have experiences as well, to have an outlet. Like, you always have a religious expert, so if you ever have a question about anything, you can just ask, and sometimes you get an answer that you don't want. That's too long. But I found that to be really helpful.
It's too long.
Yeah.
It's like, let me dive into the articles I have, because I just wrote a sermon on this. And or
let me read you my 517-page book.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but in terms of, I would say though, in terms of like my interactions at church, though, I would say that it's not been very helpful, because at least for me, like, just kind of being around people who don't necessarily know as much as you know, and then also kind of seeing firsthand some of the frustration that goes into being a pastor, especially with people that, I mean, in any congregation, people that can be very difficult a lot of the time. Just kind of, it doesn't make you resent the people, because that sounds terrible, but you definitely aren't necessarily going in there with as much of an unbiased opinion as the average churchgoer would.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's huge. Like, probably the biggest part of being a pastor's kid is that you see the inside of the church.
Yep.
And, I mean, you know, it's not always pretty. In fact, most of the time it's pretty ugly.
Yep.
But, you know, I mean, that's really across all denominations, too. No matter if you're any denomination of Protestantism or Catholic, there's something going down.
All the time.
You just don't, I mean, but you don't really see it unless you're there.
Yeah, and I actually think a lot of people don't really realize that, like, pastors do more than just show up on the Sunday and, like, preach the sermon.
Are you kidding?
So much, I think, you know, like, I'm sure you'll agree that, like, our parents, to be where they are, like, you have to be a really effective communicator.
Oh, yeah.
Like, not just a great public speaker. Actually, like, my dad originally majored in political science. It's like, it's all, like, the same thing, but it's just incredibly difficult. I could not do that job.
No
and so whenever
way.
people are like, yeah, you're going to be a pastor too, I'm like, I could not do that.
Isn't that crazy?
I would throw things at people all the time.
Oh, it's true. Yeah, when everyone asks me, like, you're going to follow in your mom or your dad's footsteps, and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I
love
the Lord, and I definitely am grateful for the path that they've taken.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to take it.
No.
Which actually, leads me to my next thing. So, because the church is like, I mean, I don't really want to use the term dying, because I don't want to think of it that way.
But you're right.
I guess the church is dying. You think it needs to die Like, do you think there's some? Because I don't really see I mean, I know that we live in this sort of bubble of, especially of Catholicism. There's no real like feeling of, oh, there's no faith here.
Right.
I don't feel that way, but I definitely feel like, I mean, up until like this year, there's always been like something happening in a church that I've been to, that my parents are serving at, or a church that I've been attending. It's like something's just not like clicking.
Right.
And do you feel like there's like, is the way that Christians worship and fellowship together, is that going to change? And if so, what's your vision for that change?
Okay, that's a really hard question.
Yeah, I know, but it's crazy because I'm like thinking the same thing.
I mean, I definitely see the decay, and I'm not gonna lie, it's actually for me quite worrying, because I value the kind of more traditional type of worship that not everyone does. Mm-hmm. But I do think, I mean, clearly something has to change, because like church congregations are getting older and younger people aren't coming. Mm-hmm. And so something about the way we do this has to change. Now, I don't really know how that happens. I mean, people have already, of course, there's already like, social media pastors and all that sort of thing, which I personally do not think is the correct way to go about it.
It's pretty weird, in my opinion.
But I also think that we have to acknowledge that for our generation especially, technology is basically, I don't want to say this, but it's kind of become a form of deity for us in a way, a lot of the time. Like, if you think about the amount of time we spend in this world.
Without a doubt, yeah.
So, I mean, I don't want to say it's replacing God for people, because that sounds like I'm calling everyone like heathens or whatever. But I do think that perhaps if we can find a way to kind of put the technology away for a while, then it'll come back. And I don't mean put it away like stop using technology, because that'll never happen. But I think part of the novelty of it is that it's so new. Like, we're the first generation that's had this forever.
Yeah. Like
our whole lives. But I just think that once that wears off, hopefully we'll find a way to kind of start living again in the actual world. I think once that happens, religion is going to take more of a front seat. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, I know there's a lot of different, worship is definitely evolving even in the church itself.
Yeah.
I like traditional worship. I also like contemporary. I play in a worship band. I enjoy it. I just think there's just some way that's different from what we're doing now. I think change is needed.
And I also think a big thing actually is just kind of like people that are Christian, especially like really faithful Christians. I think a lot of us just need to like not try to push it on people, but just like make it more known, because I think the stereotype of like, the conservative Christian and just like, not believing in evolution and all that sort of thing, I still feel like that persists. When, I mean, there are many scientists and lots of people that are liberal and modern and stuff who are still religious, and I feel like sometimes it's like we need to make Christ cool again or something like that, and just make it more like show that people in the mainstream who are normal and that and that you're friends with are like this, so it can't be some like crazy old-fashioned thing.
Well, it's absolutely like the stereotype persists. I mean, just like a quick side rant on like the evolution thing.
I knew you were gonna get caught up in that.
Oh my gosh, dude. Can we, I don't want to be extreme about this, and I respect like anyone's opinion that, it's just like, if you truly do not believe that evolution like is a thing, because God, like, it's not in the Bible, I'm like, you know what? Oh, okay. Like,
I'm going to disagree with you there. I'm going to say that if you really still think that the Bible was like written verbatim from exactly what happened, I think you need to rethink your life philosophy.
I mean, yes. I think a lot of things that like even Christians like I don't know, we're PKs. It's drilled into our system. Like, there are parts of the Bible that you can't take literally, because then you're going to look at it and be like, what on earth is this? And so, like, that's a huge point.
Yeah.
And I think there's especially in like the EPC congregation, there's this huge factor of like God's word is final, and you need like biblical, like no matter what your beliefs, so, like if there's something that you don't like agree on with another brother or sister, if you have a biblical like way to back up your belief, that's okay. If it's something just like random and there's nothing in the Bible that even like points to it at all, then it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
but as far as evolution, I'm like, who's to say that it can't be in conjunction with God's will?
Right. In fact, I think it perfectly like flows.
Yes, I agree.
I mean, if you actually look at the 7 days, what you'll see is that like the animals were there first, and if you're going to be really technical about it, until we got the first Homo sapien, we're animals. So I'm just saying, like,
it's true.
If you consider them to not be like 24-hour days, which I think you really have to at this point.
Yeah.
Because there's so much scientific evidence for evolution that I just think it's ignorant to think otherwise. And also, people who reject science in favor of religion, I think they're missing the point that God made
that.
Science.
Yeah.
So
I'm like, I mean, I'm not like a science geek or anything. I'm definitely a humanities person, but like, there are some things in this universe that are just like, that's not coincidental, and that's just God's beauty at work. In
black holes and quantum mechanics. Like, if you think God is not at work in that, I think that's one of right. How could that just happen? It couldn't.
But yeah, and like evolution's the same way. Everyone's like, God, I mean, I'm a Southerner, but like the stereotypical thing is like, God made the earth in 7 days, and we ain't evolved from no monkeys. And I'm like, nope. No one's even saying that we evolved right from monkeys into
that's not
humans.
True either.
It's like, whatever. But I think that God, I mean, there's no way. Like, we're humans. We're never going to understand what's going on.
No, and I think that's part of the beauty of faith. It's just that, of course, you don't actually know any of this for sure. But you can use your own mind and kind of think, am I going to just reject the entire scientific community because of, like, a page?
Yeah, because of
one
thing.
Page,
Yeah. And it's just like you can't, there's just certain passages that they're really important. But, like, they're not, it's not like it's that's exactly how it went down. Just like, I mean, I don't know. There are some stories.
Because if you think, I mean, the thing that always gets me is, like, how could Genesis be literal when the first 5 days, there
like,
were no people, so you weren't there, so you don't know.
Yeah, and like God, I mean, I don't know. It's just like how in the Quran, that's all like Allah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Muhammad speaking, but it's literally like he was taken over by the Holy Spirit. So, but like that is different, and we're also talking about different things. Like we don't know how things got like in the Bible necessarily, like some of them past like New Testament stuff most of that's direct accounts or letters or whatever. But yeah, particularly Genesis, like who's gonna talk about that? Like God had to tell you, but like from all the encounters in the Bible where God has actually spoken to disciples or humans in general, it's not like there's no straightforward answer for anything.
No.
I mean, he's all like he won't even say like my name is blah. Like you will die. Moses sees God and dies. Like these are certain things that like you like if you're gonna look past anything, don't look past these, because like this is like there are just certain instances that like define our level of understanding with God, and you're not going to be able to exceed it.
I say a lot of the things that people will refer back to the Bible, either to try to discredit it or to try to discredit science, is things mostly in the Old Testament, I would say. Some of the really old stuff, Leviticus and Numbers and all the weird rules about wearing different fabrics and executing people and women not being able to speak in church. Of course. I mean, you have to take into account when this was written. So long ago.
Well, there's also the idea, besides the cultural norms, about like what changes when Christ dies on the cross for you.
Right.
There's no like we don't do sacrifices anymore
Yeah, that's good.
because we had the ultimate sacrifice. Like,
Yeah.
there are little things like that. I think most people pick up on those, but like, that should be translated into some of the cultural things as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. That turned into a longer, more broad rant than I wanted it to, but like, these are like important things
These
to
are
know.
important things,
Like,
yeah.
they're just, it does bother me when people kind of like put labels that make no sense on some certain passages, or
Yeah.
like mantras in their life based on something that I'm
Right.
like, I just don't see it. I mean, I just don't see it. And I think there's pressure from like being a PK about knowing everything about
Right.
the Bible,
Which is not true.
which is like, how can you ever expect us to do that, especially when we're all like 11 and we're like
Right.
going to a new church and they're like, so can you name all the Bible books in order? And
I
then
used
tell
to be
me,
able to
like,
do that.
Yeah, I mean,
And now I
I've
can't.
never
No.
been able to.
You also can't
do it.
pronounce half of them.
Yeah, they're like, oh, you don't know how to
Habakkuk.
pronounce this name, and I'm like, oh, this weird like
Or
Israeli
the
name.
genealogies.
Yeah, they're like, I mean, I know that like I read them because I was a nerd, but like
Yeah.
nobody else is gonna read that.
Or
And they're
I-
like, so blah 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 blah.
I think one day my dad had to read, like, I forget which book it might be at the beginning of Luke or something, one of the genealogies of Christ, which for people who don't know
Oh no.
is like a list of like 30 or so Greek and really hard to say phonetically
Yeah.
names, and just the entire congregation is like looking at him like, what is this? Because it's like, who was the son of this? Who was the son of this? Who was the father of this guy?
who lived to
It
be
just
this
goes
old?
on for, yes, and
Yeah.
all the ages,
Yeah.
which of course are like 941 and,
Yeah, like
and stuff
wasn't
like that.
Moses like 500 and some years old?
Yeah, they used to live a lot longer.
Yeah, apparently.
Or maybe they didn't, but it says in the Bible they
I
lived
don't
a
know,
lot
it's
longer.
God's time. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy stuff, man.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just, I think it's it goes without saying, like, as much of the I can attribute a lot of my spiritual growth to being a PK,
Mhm.
and not always in the most positive of ways. I think overall the experience has been great.
Yeah.
I mean, I am fortunate, like you said, having a professional on
Yep.
site, 2 professionals for us
Yeah.
in our house. It definitely is like, well, I mean, if I have like a serious question that I can't figure out, I can always ask the person that's studied it for like 20
Yeah.
years.
So long.
Yeah, so it's
Uh.
definitely, that's great. But I think there are always like some bigger questions that even our parents aren't going to be able to like begin to answer because they are answering them
Right.
themselves. And this kind of ties into the last, like when we talked about this in English a couple weeks ago. We were talking about, like, first of all, like, does heaven and hell exist? Like, are these real places that we go? And how do we decide who's going? And then, I mean, okay, I'm just gonna put this on the table now because I'm not trying to offend anybody. This is just a separation. Like, this is why the church is separated between Catholicism and Protestantism. I don't believe in purgatory.
Me neither.
I don't
Yep.
think it's a thing. I completely understand if that's what you believe. It's perfectly fine. But like, I don't know. It's just, there's just a disconnect for me.
Yeah.
That's all. So like, that's not really part of the conversation. What's more important is like, when Calvin was thinking about like the elect and all this,
Yeah.
and Calvin and Luther redesigning all of like like our break from the Catholic Church and everything,
Right.
and then I mean I guess let's start there, because like assuming heaven and hell are both real places, then like who's going and who's not?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of those questions that no matter how long you study theology, you'll never actually be able to answer that question. I don't think you'll know until you die. But I do think, for me, it's always been sort of a disconnect between the concept of hell as an eternal punishment and the nature of, like, the New Testament loving, forgiving God. Like, for me, I think there might be a hell, but I also think it's empty.
Ah.
Like, I don't think anyone goes there. I really don't. And I know there are bad, and that's probably not an opinion that a lot of people have, but I think there are very bad people in the world, but I also think that none of them are so completely bad that an omnipotent, you know, completely loving, forgiving God who gave up his own son, and if you're going all Trinity here, part of himself,
yes,
for a completely sinful group of, people, then I really don't think he's going to send you to eternal damnation for being human, essentially,
Yeah.
a lot of the time.
It's just, yeah, I mean, I like to think that way. It's just so difficult to put labels on it. Like,
Right.
I mean, there's part of it is like, I live by faith, and like faith is what drives me to salvation, not works.
Right.
And like I think that's I mean, not to say that like faith is de-emphasized in the Catholic Church, but there's definitely more of a like traditional value of
doing good things
of works. And that is super, super important.
And it works out pretty well too.
And and they do a lot of great things. And I think you have to act on that. But like in terms of doing one thing or another that determines that, it's like on the one hand, just because I serve at a soup kitchen or whatever,
right?
And then like Adolf Hitler did his thing, and
right.
There's the
that's a good question, because what I just said about there not being anyone in hell, like then of course you bring up someone like Hitler, and people would be like, of course Hitler would go to hell, of course.
But like in his own rationale, he probably wouldn't even
I think
it.
I always go back. I know there's a passage that just says, no one is in a position to condemn, only Christ.
Yeah.
So I just think you have to, like, what would God think of Hitler? I don't know.
Yeah, we're never gonna know that.
Yeah, you cannot know that.
I mean, it's just I would really hope, and I definitely think that like God can't approve of that.
Right, but I also think, I mean, you look, we don't have nearly the capacity for compassion and understanding as God, of course.
Not,
but I also think you can look at someone like Hitler, who, was a rebel and grew up in Germany after World War I during the Great Depression, and you think, and was imprisoned, and you just think, there were some things going on in his life that made this seem probably like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And so you have to wonder, is having good intentions, even if they can be absolutely the worst thing you could do and seem totally immoral and wrong, I think God would understand that.
I don't know. I mean, it's a huge question, and I think it's
an unanswerable question.
But it's also valid. I mean, Hitler's view is definitely like, it's very narrow. Like, I mean, come on, United States, like this is our bad kind of, because like we screwed over Germany after World War I with the rest of the global community.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, we're in huge debt, and we're all like, our money has no power, and our country's in ruins, and we have to pay everyone.
Yep.
And we're sad and horrible.
And also the Great Depression, just because that wasn't enough. Yeah.
And so, and then Hitler was like in the middle of all that, and
he was
like,
there,
Yeah, and he said like, I want to make this country like something better because we've been through so much crap.
And I also think we forget sometimes that like the anti-Semitism of Hitler, Martin Luther was incredibly anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's always been something that was a natural scapegoat for people, and it just so happened that was the easiest thing for him to find, and that's a purely psychological reaction too. To any sort of, especially on that level of just a country being completely just like crushed by the rest of the world. I think it makes sense. Of course, and also just a disclaimer, I'm not like justifying Hitler in any way.
No, I think that goes without saying. But
yeah.
Well, it's just, how could we? I mean, we as humans can't put that judgment on. I think I think it's pretty much unanimous. It's just Hitler's like the example for horrible person.
Anything bad, and he's the first guy to come up. Yeah.
But like at the same time, in terms of his eternal salvation or damnation, I don't know.
I don't know either.
And like, I don't know, you could point to anything, his suicide, his his actions leading up to everything, and or like the pardon of like his situation, and then the power corrupts, absolutely, and
Yep.
then and God is still, he handles that how he will. It's just it is like it's a
It
mind
makes you
boggler.
very uncomfortable to picture Hitler in heaven.
I guess
Yeah.
it does, yeah. Well, I don't know. It's kind of like that. I think that's part of us as humans. Like when we,
Yeah.
especially when we feel like a hatred towards something, it's hard to see that thing in like a righteous kind of view.
Right.
And because like it's not like Hitler's wearing his Nazi uniform in heaven.
No.
And that's not how I would think. It's and just a side note, Quentin Tarantino, has a movie about that. Not well, about World War II, Inglourious Bastards, and there's this huge part in the book oh my gosh, the movie. There's a huge part in the movie where it's this ongoing theme about like the U.S. sends in this team to go, like help the resistance in Germany, and when they capture soldiers that are survivors, like they ask Brad Pitt's character, who's both hilarious and terrifying, is like, when you get out of, like, what are you gonna do when you get out of the war? And all of the soldiers like, oh, I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna kiss my mother or whatever. And it's they're all like these innocent things, but then he's like, well, you're gonna want to take off your uniform, right? And like I want people to know that you were a Nazi soldier. And if taking off your uniform, and like one guy actually says like he's gonna burn his uniform. Yeah. And they're like, I can't allow that. And it's like, so he marks them with the swastika on their foreheads.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing as like we can't, especially, I mean, we're pretty at our basic, like basically humans are petty. Yep. I think no matter how you look at it, but that pettiness just like becomes such a degree of judgment. And it's scary. It's like we can't see another side of a person when their opinion is too strong. And like I think God can, and maybe that makes a difference. So I don't know. Well, do you have any like opinion on maybe the idea that there is no heaven and hell? I mean, what
at
then?
All?
Yeah, no, nothing.
Well, I mean, I'd like to think that once we die, we don't just like float away in the ether.
Yeah.
To just not exist anymore. And I think that's part of the reason why something like heaven is so incredibly appealing to people, because then it's like, I don't have to be like counting down the days until I just kind of like don't exist anymore, because that sounds a lot worse than going to live in a spiritual paradise.
Yeah.
So I've always liked to think that there's something, but I guess we'll have to find that out, hopefully a while from now.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully. It's a big question.
It's like it's like the biggest question in human history.
Probably.
What happens after we die?
Oh,
yeah.
Without a doubt. And so it's crazy. Well, anyway, we're just running out of time here, so I'm gonna like wrap it up. But I wanted to just give you like a minute or so, a little plug. I know you're going to Penn, obviously, which is fantastic.
Thanks.
If you just want to like tell the people what's going on in your life, say whatever you want. Time's yours.
That's actually the hardest question. So gonna study chemistry at Penn, and that's gonna be pretty exciting, I think. I ended up getting myself somehow into this weird honors program where I've now gotten myself into like a commitment to also get a master's degree in chemistry in the next 4 years with my bachelor's degree. So I'm not really sure how that happened. So, I mean, I'm going to be very busy for the next 4 years. Yeah. That's all I can say.
You're definitely going to be busy. Well, it's all super exciting, and
this is a very exciting time for everybody, I think.
I know. Yeah. Well, how many days we got left?
I think 12. 12
days?
too many. 13 too many days.
I don't know. Dave, Jason Moore keeps saying, he said today we got 7 days left, and I'm assuming that's before finals. So, like, I think it's,
Is it less than that?
It's like 9, right?
Oh, my gosh.
So we're close. We're really
that's
close.
Crazy.
But, I mean, well, congratulations on your acceptance, and I hope it all goes awesome for you.
You too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, roads.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
I hope no
Plenty
one
of
ever pronounces the H in that.
Rhodes.
Rhodes.
Yeah, please don't ever do that to me. I'll be very
I'm gonna do that
upset.
from now on.
Oh, please don't. It's okay. You get a free pass just because PK for life.
Yep.
All right. Anyway, well, thanks for being on the show, Tess. It was great to have you.
Thank you.
And thank you for all tuning in. This was the Headbanger, and I hope you tune in very soon for another edition right here on the Uproar. Stay tuned, Nash.